All right, welcome back to the JFK assassination. This is video number 85. It's 21 December. Actually, it's 22 December now. And it's now the shortest day of the year. So, from now on, well, after the 25th, because it'll be about 3 days, they're about the same length. But after about 3 days, on the 25th, the days will start getting longer. So that's something to look forward to, right? Summer's coming. It's on its way. So just remember that no matter how bad your situation is, no matter how impossible the obstacles ahead of you seem, that nothing is impossible. That today, just say to yourself, today, right now, is the darkest hour. The world may be going to shit. Your life may be going to shit. Your marriage may be going to shit. Your family may be going to shit. Your job may be going to shit. But hold on. Just hold on just a few more hours. Because this is the darkest day. The longest night. And it only gets better from here. Now, we can apply this to our personal lives, and we can apply this to our lives as a country. And in our personal lives, if you're suffering, if seems like things are never going to go your way and never going to get better, just hold on just a little longer. Never give up. Because it's always the lowest point, the darkest point, right before the dawn. Always. And this is how I've learned to survive, because I've been through some really bad situations, and I've always learned if I could just hold on, no matter what it takes, just claw myself back up that cliff, or hold on to that cliff, that the sun's going to come out. Okay? And how many times have you been lost, or things seemed bad, and help was right around the corner? Or say you lost your keys, and it's always the last place that you look that you find it, right? If you had given up, you never would have found your keys, but you kept looking, and it was the very last place you looked, and you found your keys. It's the same way with anything in life. Keep striving, keep looking, keep fighting, keep struggling to survive, and nothing's impossible. You know, we see these heroes in the movies, and they got tired, they got beat, they got knocked down, they got bloodied, they got their nose broken, their body scratched up, shot, wounded, stabbed, whatever. But the ones that kept going were able to win in the end, because what? The cavalry's always right over the hill. And you can't see the cavalry because you're down in the valley. But you don't know on the other side of that hill, come sunrise, is the cavalry. And if you can just hold on just a little longer, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's your emotional life, your family life, your marital life, your job's life, or us as a nation, things are always going to get better. Now, since Kennedy's assassination, it does seem like things have all gone downhill. That things couldn't get as worse for our country. That, you know, what's the point? They're all a bunch of corrupt assholes anyway, right? And no matter how much you bitch and scream and yell and holler and protest and post on Facebook and post on Twitter and write a letter to your congressman, nothing ever changes, right? Well, I got a question for you. If things are so bad in the United States, if things are at its lowest point and it can't get any worse, why do we have record amounts of people trying to cross into this horrible place? Record every month for the last few years of people trying to get into this place that we think is falling apart. Why would they do that? Didn't they get the memo that the U.S. is done for? Our best days are behind us. It's never going to get better. It's the fall of the American empire. Many people in America are leaving, expatriates to other countries, because it's so bad here, right? But yet, it's all in perspective. What some of us see as a collapsed empire in the darkest of the valleys, others see as a shining beacon of light and hope on the hill. So it's all about your perspective. And to bring this back around to the JFK assassination, what's the point, right? They killed him and they got away with it. And they're still getting away with it. And the people that got away with it are now dead, right? They're all buried. And things are not getting better, they're getting worse. And the only way to change things is a civil war, right? Let's have a national divorce between the red and the blue states. But the truth is, there are no red states, there are no blue states. It's only American states. If you look at any map, we'll say Georgia. Yeah, there may be red in the mountains, there may be a lot of red counties, but in every city, Atlanta, Macon, Savannah, Columbus, is all blue. So how are you going to have a civil war and separate when you've got all these islands of blue amongst the red? Whether we like it or, whether we like our relatives, our in-laws or not, we're stuck with them. Okay? My brother's an asshole. I don't like him. I don't talk to him. But if anyone ever came to my brother and tried to kill him, I'd be the first one there to defend him, right? You know how that works? Family, blood. It's your kin. Yeah, we've got a lot of differences in our country. A lot of shit that's tearing us apart, the way we look at things. What's changed is that people are now attacking each other as individuals because of their beliefs, and forgetting that we're all Americans. And I don't have a crystal ball. I can't guarantee that everything's going to work out. But I can guarantee you this. If we give up, if we just say, fuck it, and let go, and don't try to make things better, don't try to solve our problems, don't try to fix our situations, nothing will ever get better. And it will definitely get worse. And, people forget we have a lot of enemies too. Because there's a lot of people that want to see us fail. There are a lot of people that like the darkness and don't like the light and want to shut down the light. and divide the light and have it snuffed out. And these are real enemies. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Syria. So let's not forget that a lot of our problems, even though they would exist, even these countries didn't exist, have also been exasperated by them and exploited by them. Okay? So let's not forget where a lot of those messages are coming from. So now, just because we need to be united doesn't mean that we can't go after wrongdoers in our country. You know, just because we want to have a united front, say in World War II, to fight Hitler, didn't mean we stopped prosecuting murderers and gangsters. So you fight on all fronts. And it's a tough fight. Okay? And I'll break it down real easy here. We got the best law enforcement agency in the world, the FBI. And we've got one of the best intelligence services in the world, the CIA. And we've got one of the best presidential protective groups in the world called the Secret Service. And they're worth every penny that we put into it, and everybody that's in those groups that we train and pay are worth their weight in gold. But it doesn't mean there aren't traitors and people who break their oath in those organizations. Just like every cop, police department doesn't have a bad cop. I mean, just like every police department is not all corrupt. They're good cops, and there's a few bad apples. And we constantly are having to go through and take out those bad apples. So it goes along with that. There's going to be, because people are fallible and human, there's going to be bad people inside the CIA, the FBI, and the Secret Service. Not to call those people out is to say that all the FBI and the CIA and the Secret Service are bad, okay? So let's not go that extreme, because, just like you got a lot of cops and cop unions that if you, point out there's a corrupt cop, a bad cop, a killer cop, a murderer as a cop, a criminal as a cop, then you can't point that out, because that's saying that all cops are bad, which is bullshit. Okay? You can fight on all fronts. Okay? Just because you love your kids doesn't mean that you can't punish them and correct them when they do wrong. Okay? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't. And to sit there and say that if you punish or point out the wrongs of the cops or FBI, then you're saying that all cops and FBI are bad is bullshit. Just like if you say, well, if I love my children, I can't punish them when they do wrong, because that would mean I don't love them. That's bullshit. We all know that's bullshit. Okay? You can love your child, but if your child hits another kid or steals, if you don't correct that action and punish them, that's not showing love for them. So it's the same way with this situation. And so we have some bad apples. And not only do we have bad apples, in between good apples and bad apples, and leaning towards bad apples, we have people who ideologically have a certain point of view, and believe that if public officials don't have that point of view, they must be evil or in cahoots with our enemies. And therefore, they make that logical leap that if they don't agree with me, they must be with the enemy. And if they're with the enemy, then it's okay to eliminate them. And that's what we have here when good people in the CIA and the FBI sanction and go along with the murder of a public official like Kennedy because they politically disagreed with him. And that's what we have with Maurice Bishop and these other CIA people who loved America so much that they thought protecting America could also mean killing a president, an elected official that they disagreed with, that they thought was harming America. All right, so we're going to get back to 23 September 1963. This time period is very, very critical because this is about when, or right before this is what triggers all these plans to go into motion. They'd already had decided they were going to kill him. They didn't know where or when. They'd set up different patsies in different areas to be ready. And because of Lyndon Johnson, they were able to manipulate JFK into going to Texas. And once they announced the plans and they're going to Dallas and all that, that's when everything kicks in. Oswald's moved to Dallas from New Orleans. All the chess pieces start moving together. But first, before they get him in Dallas permanently, they've got to taint him a little bit more with that communist brush. Okay? And again, doesn't quite make a lot of sense. If he's a communist and he's shooting an extreme right-winger like General Walker, why the hell would he go after a liberal president who's trying to find some kind of compromise with the Soviets and find some kind of compromise with Castro? Although that's the reason that they brand Kennedy as an enemy, but they flip it and make it that this communist somehow was going to kill Kennedy, which doesn't make any sense. But they like to make that argument, okay, that's why Oswald is guilty, because, hey, he shot at General Walker, so he must have shot at Kennedy, right? But completely different political perspectives. And most people are going to go after people that don't match their political perspective. All right, so in 23 September 1963, Ruth Paine, who's in D.C. before that, watching Martin Luther King, probably getting some orders at the CIA, maybe some training, just happens to drive back through New Orleans right at the same time that Oswald decides to go back to Dallas. So they load Baby June and Marina into Ruth Paine's car and go back to Dallas. They also load that rifle. Now, Oswald may have been there loading that rifle in the car, but he wasn't there when they unloaded that rifle from the car. And it's my understanding that Michael Paine was the person who unloaded the car and put everything in that garage. So if that rifle is wrapped up in that blanket, don't you think Michael Paine would have been curious? Like, what the hell was that in that blanket? That felt like a rifle. So for her to sit there and say she didn't know that, and don't you think he would have talked about it with Ruth Paine? Oswald has a rifle. So for her to say she didn't know he had a rifle, and if she knew he had a rifle, he wouldn't allow it in the house, is bullshit, because he's seen at the sports dome practicing with that rifle. That means he's coming over to Marina's, Ruth Payne's house, cleaning that rifle, oiling it up, and taking it on the bus, wrapped up in that blanket, to the rifle range, target practicing, and coming back. And you mean she never sees him do that? If someone brought a gun into your house, don't you think you would have saw him bring that fucking gun into your house? But anyway, so on September 24th, the very next day, Maurice Bishop is seen speaking with Oswald by Antonia Veciano, who travels to Dallas for a meeting with Maurice Bishop, a.k.a. David Atlee Phillips, the head of the Cuban operations in Mexico City. So he was monitoring the Cubans from the Mexico City embassy. In the lobby of the Southland building, Veciano sees Bishop speaking with the man Veciano later identifies as Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, the FBI will tell you that they have no bus ticket, or they look through all the tickets and there's no name of Oswald getting a bus going from New Orleans to Dallas. And there's also no name of Oswald getting a bus going from New Orleans to Laredo. So what they completely avoid here is that someone could have drove Oswald from New Orleans to Dallas and then Dallas to Laredo. But they don't get into that. All right. Now, Antonio Veciano. Let's get into him real quick. We've all seen Antonio Veciano. He was a Cuban exile, founder and leader of the anti-Castro group Alpha 66. And it says here he had recognized Oswald. And let's see what else here. It's important. Now, the anti-Castro groups were being paid by the CIA, okay, for training and all this kind of stuff, and living expenses, weapons, things like that. So Veciano would be, going and meeting with Bishop and giving him money, debriefing him, and then giving orders by Bishop. But at this time, Veciano is walking into his meeting. He notices this guy coming out who he later identifies as Oswald. All right. Let's see. See if there's anything else. Now, at the same time he testified, around the same time he testified, or right after he testified, he was shot in Miami in the head in a drive-by shooting. And that's kind of a warning. That tells the other Cubans, keep your mouth shut, don't talk about what you know. All right, so let's take a look. There's some more information here. I'm not going to read through all of this. Veciano explained the policy. It was my case officer, Maurice Bishop, who had the idea to attack the Soviet ships. The intention was to cause trouble between Kennedy and the Russians. Bishop believed that Kennedy and Khrushchev had made a secret government, that the U.S. would do nothing more to help in the fight against Castro. So basically, what happened is that Kennedy did make a pact with Khrushchev that Kennedy would hold back the attacks, the anti-Castro Cubans, from attacking Cuba, and then Cuba, Russia would withdraw its missiles and not have to get as militarily involved with Cuba. So the CIA didn't like that, so they were trying to force a wedge through that, okay, by having them attack Soviet ships in Cuba. Because see, just like there are hardliners in the U.S. government, there are hardliners in the Soviet government. And that if they had attacked Soviet ships, it would have been really difficult for Khrushchev to go to this military and keep them from staging a coup against him or violating his policies and helping Cuba arm, because it would seem like he was weak against Kennedy. And let's see here. Oh yeah, and that office building was owned by H.L. Hunt, where they met at. So let's see. Now this looks like testimony before. Yeah, in 1976 of Veciano. Hold on one second. And it says right here, Veciano revealed further that at one meeting with Bishop in Dallas in late August or September 1963, he saw with him a young man he later recognized as Lee Harvey Oswald. All right. It says here, when Veciano arrived for the meeting, Bishop was there talking with Oswald. Veciano does not recall whether he was introduced to Oswald by name, but he said he did not have any conversation with him. Oswald remained with Bishop and Veciano only for a brief time as they walked toward a nearby coffee shop. Oswald then departed, and Bishop and Veciano continued their meeting alone. Veciano testified that he recognized the young man with Bishop as Lee Oswald after the photographs of him following the Kennedy assassination. There was absolutely no doubt in his mind that the man was Oswald, not just someone who resembled him. Veciano pointed out that he had been trained to remember the physical characteristics of people, and that was not, if it was not Oswald, it was his exact double. All right, hold on one second. And here, you see how they're trying every way they can to frame Oswald again. So he says Bishop himself, however, did suggest to Veciano the possibility of some involvement, because they just said that they never discussed the assassination. This is 2 months after the assassination. He's meeting with Bishop, and at the time there was a news reports that Oswald had met with some Cubans during the visit to Mexico. Veciano said that Bishop was aware that he had a relative, Guillermo Ruiz, who was a high-ranking officer in Castro's intelligence service stationed in Mexico City. Bishop told Veciano that if he could get in touch with Ruiz, he could pay Ruiz a large amount of money to say publicly that it was him and his wife who had met with Oswald. Veciano agreed to make the attempt to contact Ruiz because, as he testified, I knew that Ruiz would be tempted with the money. He liked money. Veciano, however, was never successful in contacting Ruiz, and when he mentioned it to Bishop a couple of months later, Bishop told him to forget it. So again, why would this head of Cuban operations be trying to connect Oswald with Cuban intelligence right there by bribing them to take some money? So again, it just shows you they're trying at every angle to tie Oswald in to Russian and Cuban intelligence. All right, so what you have here is a secret memo by the Office of the Director of the Department of Justice, so the Attorney General, to the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Okay, they're talking about this secret program called Oswald, and they're going over basically a lot of the allegations made by Veciano. Okay, and so this is what you have again is, and this is why I say it's not the government killed Kennedy. It's rogue individuals in the government using the government agencies, personnel, equipment, properties and facilities to carry out missions. Because it's like this, when you have people with top secret clearances, almost everything is on a need to know basis. You could have the head of anti-Cuban operations out of Mexico City declare something, everything that they're doing is just need to know, that not even the station chief would know about. And they can be directing people to do certain things to help facilitate the assassination of Kennedy and aid rogue agents and aid rogue, Cuban exiles and military personnel to carry out that assassination. And other elements of the CIA and the FBI would have no idea that was going on. And again, it's very obvious when you read through a lot of these memos that you have genuine people inside the Department of Justice, inside the FBI, inside the CIA that are investigating these things, and they can't figure out exactly what's going on. It's my opinion that all these different agencies did internal secret investigations, and they realized what happened. That some of their own personnel that are active or retired use that agency's facilities, personnel, and property and money to carry out the assassination of the president. And that their first obligation, just like any agency, is to protect your own ass. So they covered up anything coming up to bite them. Any kind of information, documents, they destroyed. That's why you're not going to find these documents at the National Archives. They've gone through house cleaned. Anything that hints at anybody in their agency having anything to do with killing the president, they destroyed all those documents. Okay? We're not going to be finding these documents, in the last few jewels of the presidential records at the NARA. They've all been cleansed, all been destroyed. And that's because of the number one reason, not because they agreed with the assassination, not because they went along with the assassination, but to protect their own ass. What? You have people running rogue in your own agency, and they killed the fucking president of the United States, and you weren't aware of what they were doing, and then you tried covering it up? Well, Mr. Director, I would think that we would go for dismantling completely your agency, because who can we trust in your agency at all? And then again, it all comes back to, your own personal ass. You got people with pensions, CIA pensions, military pensions. They got mortgages. They got to pay Medicare. They want to get their Social Security. They don't want to go to prison. And they want to pass on whatever they have left over to their children and grandchildren. So that's why they covered it up. And people say all the time, well, okay, if a bunch of rogue agents 60 years ago did it, well, and they're all dead, well, who the hell's covering it up now? Why would they cover it up now? Well, again, it goes back to the same thing. The agency at the time covered it up. The later agency covered it up. And the agency now is covering it up to protect their own ass. To protect their... And a lot of them, even today, because all that documents, all those things have been destroyed, they don't know for sure. They have hints, but they don't have any documents because they've all those documents have been burnt. You know, in every embassy, every agency, they have shredders and they have burn boxes. Okay? It's not like they're taking all those files and putting them in boxes and sending them over to the National Archives. They're maybe 10% of the documents or 20% of the documents are getting through the National Archives. Everything else is getting destroyed. So anything that implicates wrongdoing from anyone in the agency, they're going to destroy that and say, oh, national security. And we're never going to see that. Anything that could damage the agency or people alive in the agency, they're going to get rid of. Okay? And why wouldn't they? They've had 60 fucking years. And every time, I'm sure they even set up a group inside each agency that would screen through all documents going to NARA. So when you got some guy retires, he's the director or assistant director or whatever, or he dies of a heart attack, and they go in and they clean out his files. All those files get screened by whatever this secret agency is. The secret department in that agency. There's going to be a group of people in there, probably older individuals. They're going to go through, and anything that could implicate or damage the agency in the assassination, they're going to destroy. They're not going to give that over to NARA. So, and then another thing, another little trick they'll do is they'll take up all these documents that are in there by date and organized by department or action, and they'll mix them all up. That's why when you go into these document agencies, you got just documents all over the ass. It's just doesn't make any sense. You got documents mixed in from 1969 with 1963 and on completely different operations. Some Cuban operation, some Mexico City, some Soviet, whatever. So this is what's going on. So anything implicating any of the agencies, it's already been destroyed. All right. We'll keep going. But like I said, there's hints. Like I use this, you know, you got a house and you burn down the house. Well, before you had a house that was what, 30 feet high, made of wood, solid, it seemed like, but now all you have is a concrete foundation and a bunch of ash and rubble. So can you tell that there was a house or that anyone ever actually lived there? Well, yes, you can, because there's going to be property deeds. It's going to tell you who owned the house. There's going to be architectural plans that tell you what the house used to look like or was designed to look like. There's going to be tax records that's going to tell you the value of the house and the owner. So there's going to be hints and shadows of what that house looked like. Even if you don't have the actual physical house, there may be paperwork that could help you reconstruct it to kind of get an idea of what it looked like. So that's what we're dealing with this paperwork. Like I said, anything that's damaging has already been destroyed years ago. They've had 60 years to destroy it. None of it's sitting over at NARA. And then another little technique besides burning all your, so you got a committee that's or department's gone through and cleaning out all the damaging paperwork. And they burnt all that years ago, destroyed it. And then you've got another section, along with that, someone who's mixing up documents, putting them out of order, mixing up operations and dates. And then on top of that, you're going to throw in junk. You know, memos from the secretary to the coffee company about adding more cups in the break room. You know? So you're going to throw in all that shit in whatever you have left over, because no one's perfect. Maybe you missed a few diamonds, okay? Not many did they miss. And then you're going to release that to NARA, and it's going to be with millions, hundreds of millions of other files and paperwork from other departments. And you've got a bunch of guys that are just, 100, 200 researchers, private researchers that have jobs and mortgages and bills and families and wives, and not a lot of time. So that's how you destroy any investigation and finding any documents. Okay? Now you got people like that old guy over at Dealey Plaza UK who spent years pulling documents. But I guarantee you, no matter what he's pulled, is only a small percentage of what NARA has. And again, what NARA has no incriminating documents, because all of those have been filtered and destroyed. Anyway, but we do get some diamonds and some hints, okay? Let's take a look at this one. This is a top secret document dated 15 June 1978. Actions taken by the NSA to locate information related to the assassination of the President Kennedy. So this is interesting. So it says, over the past 14 and a half years, the NSA has performed a number of separate in-depth reviews of materials in its files in an attempt to isolate data that might be relevant to the assassination of President Kennedy. Nothing of significance has been determined as a result of those reviews. That's almost laughable. It's like, it's like the FBI shows up the gates at Mar-a-Lago and say, hey, we hear you have some top secret classified documents inside Mar-a-Lago. And, Trump sends his lawyers out and says, well, we did an in-depth study and look around Mar-a-Lago and we didn't find anything. And whatever stuff we did find, we've already given you. And the FBI says, well, okay, well, if you say you didn't find anything, okay, then, well, let's just move on. And they move on. But we all know that's not what happened, because that's exactly what happened. They requested documents that they knew were missing, and they figured that Trump had. And Trump sent his lawyers around and people around, and they looked, and they found some things, and they gave it back. And then they said, well, yeah, we looked, and that's all we could find. Trust us. We're honest. And the FBI knew they were full of shit. And so they executed a warrant and went in and searched, and voila, they found thousands of classified documents. What about all this shit in the bathroom? What about all this shit on the stage? Well, you said you gave us all of it, right? Right? And we believed you. And then look here. Got pictures of top secret documents sitting next to the toilet and on the stage. But we're just supposed to take your word for it, right? Just like with the NSA. Oh, well, we looked and we didn't find anything showing that we're guilty in killing the president. Nope. You can trust us. We didn't find a damn thing. Oh, okay. Well, great. Thanks for looking. We'll move on our way here. I mean, are we that fucking stupid? But here we have a document of them telling us that they're not guilty. Oh, we checked and no, we didn't have anything to do with the assassination of Kennedy. You can trust us. Oh, we found a couple of things here. Let's see. Immediately after the assassination, NSA initiated a large-scale manual and machine review of available signet, including all U.S. Cuban traffic. Oswald's. Let's see. Well, we checked for Oswald's name, and we checked for the Cubans, but we didn't find anything. Of course, they don't tell you about the guy in England and the guy in Switzerland who came out in August and September of 1963 and said, hey, they're going to kill President Kennedy. I just heard on Signet military traffic of them discussing plans to assassinate the President of the United States. But of course, that guy that went to the UN and said that, or no, Geneva or whatever he went, of course, as soon as they got him in the military, they put him in a mental hospital and said, oh, that guy's crazy. Don't believe a damn word he said. He's a nut, right? And just like Richard Nagel, well, he's a nut. He went into that bank and then he said, I went into the bank to get arrested so I wouldn't be implicated in the assassination of Kennedy 2 months later. But they're all nuts, right? Yeah. Can't believe them nuts, right? 3 nuts that said Kennedy was going to be assassinated. And lo and behold, guess what? They got lucky. They were nutty enough to figure it out. But they're all crazy, right? Anyway, Alan Dulles asked the NSA to review exhibits of any secret writings or codes which might have contained in the documents. It also appears that the NSA searched records for information on the basis of whether the Warren Commission requests made informally by Alan Dulles. Remember that guy with, what was he, with the NSA? Oh no, that military signal monitoring thing, an Angel Able Danger, whatever that was. And he reported that they were hearing traffic between Arabs in Afghanistan, that there were other Arabs traveling to the U.S. to learn how to fly airplanes to crash them into buildings. And when he passed that information up the chain, they dismissed it and relieved him of his position. And then a couple months later, you have Arabs flying planes into buildings. Anyway, November 1975, Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities. In response to an SSC request of the assassination, NSA reviewed its Soviet and Cuban files, including Cuban military. The search was also material involved being Marina Oswald, Jack Ruby, or Oral Ruby. A harvest run was made, and traffic was also reviewed, looking for information concerning Oswald's visits to Mexico City. So, again, they keep throwing out these things about the Russians and the Cubans, and it makes you think like they're looking and they're monitoring, but they got you going in the wrong directions. Because if the plot didn't start with the Russians or the Cubans, but started with people, rogue elements inside the government, and right-wing, Cubans and mafia guys, you notice they don't mention any of those groups but they got you thrown off. And then, why would the NSA be monitoring Jack or Oral Ruby before the assassination? They're mentioning here, hey, well, we looked and we didn't have anything on Jack Ruby or Oral Ruby, but why would they be monitoring them anyway? Because what the NSA does is monitor radio traffic and telecommunications, electronic traffic, okay? They're not monitoring the mail. And Marina, as far as I know, didn't have a radio. And any letters that she sent out would be first picked up by the post office and then the FBI or the CIA. So the NSA wouldn't have anything to do with any of that. And what is this harvest run? Now, if Oswald went in, and see, this all has to do, this is why I think they're mentioning these things, because what Maurice Bishop told Oswald, this is your mission. What we want to do is monitor their chain of command. We want you to go in, act crazy, act upset, shake them up, make them remember you, okay? Raise your voice, scream and yell, and then that's going to create a response. And then they're going to be messaging back on the radio, messaging back on their satellite, messaging back on their teletype. More information on Oswald, Lee Oswald. He said he lived in the Soviet Union, all this stuff. And so you're going to see him doing this at the Cuban embassy, and they're going to be contacting the Russian embassy. And then they're going to be contacting their bosses in Havana. And then Havana is going to be liaison with their people in the KGB. And then the KGB is going to be, well, you got the Russian embassy. They're going to be liaison or contacting their people in Washington and in Moscow in the KGB. And so you have this chain of command that they're going through. And then from that, they can put together a model of how this chain of intelligence is operated around the world. And that's what Maurice Bishop told Oswald his mission was. Go in, create a fuss, raise some ruckus, bring a gun. Oswald does all these odd things, okay? For someone who's going to come back and kill the president in Dallas, he does all these odd things about trying to get into Cuba so he can transit into Russia so he can come back and kill the president in Dallas? It doesn't make very much sense. But if you look at it in an intelligence idea, they're knocking over, killing two birds with one stone. They're creating this chain of command for Cuban and Russian intelligence, and they're also sheep dipping Oswald as this crazy, lone nut, probably working for the Russians and the Cubans, assassin of Kennedy. And so they're going to lay the assassination of Kennedy at the door of Cuba and force Johnson into invading Cuba. And then what you see with Johnson is this pushback, because he's got a lot of pressure from these same military people who were involved in the assassination. Look, we'll get you to be president, but you got to promise us to go into Cuba. And look, Oswald was with the Cubans. He was down in Mexico City. So we're going to release this to the American people, and they're going to demand that you invade Cuba. And Johnson's no fool. He knows that if they invade Cuba, that's World War III, and the Russians will retaliate, because he knows there's still nuclear weapons in Cuba, despite what the Russians have said and what Kennedy has said. So this is why Johnson tells Warren, we need to limit this just to Oswald. Because it starts expanding out, we're going to cause a lot of shit. All right. June 1976, pertinent to the Freedom of Information request, asked for material relating to Lee Harvey Oswald and the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. NSA again searched in its files. Strong box searches were made on the following: Lee Harvey Oswald. And see, now look at that. Lee Harvey Oswald, 1966 to 1976. Is it because maybe the NSA wasn't created until 1966, and it used to be Army intelligence, signal intelligence? I don't know. Assassination of President Kennedy, 1966 to 1976. Earl Ruby, and actually it'd be Rubenstein. And then Cabo Cleaners. What the hell is Cabo Cleaners, and why would the NSA be caring about Cabo Cleaners? Hold on one second. Yeah, see, this is how you find weird shit. Because you search what... So it says here, Earl Ruby, that's Jack Ruby's brother, once owned Cabo Cleaners on Livernois near the University of Detroit campus. Cabo Cleaners was changed to Ruby Cleaners around the time of the release of the JFK movie in 1993. This was also about the time Earl Ruby won a lengthy legal battle for possession of the pistol that Jack shot Oswald with. Anyone ever hear the acquaintance of Earl Ruby? Is the Cleaners still open on Livernois? So again, you got to ask yourself, what the hell would the NSA give a damn about a cleaner service in Detroit owned by Earl Ruby? And how come they're not looking for Jack Ruby? Very interesting. Well, one thing I would think is that the NSA would monitor telephone traffic, okay? And the FBI would put in a request to the NSA to monitor some organized crime family, business, or personal telephones, and then send them the reports. So I think maybe they're thinking about the organized crime connection there. December 1976, Senate Select Committee on Intelligence requested all the material be made available on the Cuban blank. It consisted of 485 reports for the period of 1961 to 1965. All of these reports were received by the committee staff members. So it's either a Cuban person or the Cuban embassy. March 1978, House Select Committee on Assassinations requests all data on Cuban intelligence network and other materials related to the assassination. All blank materials 1961-1964 was reviewed, as was the material that had been previously compiled. All right, so hold on one second. All right, here's a video I found. It says from Vince Palomara. This is the guy who does all the Secret Service stuff. David Atlee Phillips, a.k.a. Maurice Bishop, Antonio Veciano.
evidence of Oswald's links with agents from the CIA and the FBI in the months before the assassination. In August 1963, in Dallas, the CIA operative Antonio Veciano met with his case officer Maurice Bishop. Bishop was the CIA coordinator of the most violent anti-Castro exile group. And in Dallas, he also met with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Actually, Harvey Oswald in Dallas, in a meeting of 10 or 15 minutes with Mr. Maurice Bishop in Dallas, downtown.
And you feel certain that Oswald was working with...
Wow. So did you hear what he said there? So it was my impression that he saw Oswald as he was walking into Bishop's office and Oswald was walking out. But now he just said there is he sat in an office 10 to 15 minutes with Oswald and Bishop. Okay? So if you sit in an office across from someone for 10 to 15 minutes and then 2 months later you see them on TV, you're probably going to recognize them. So I believe he was sitting there. But I don't believe this meeting happened in August because Oswald was still in New Orleans. So it had to happen in September when Oswald was on his way to Mexico City.
Or associated with American intelligence?
Well, at least he was associated with Maurice Bishop. I mean, Maurice Bishop was intelligence. He was working for intelligence service in the United States. I don't doubt that he was working with him.
The Select Committee on Assassinations will at this time come to order.
The most damaging sealed documents of the House Select Committee on Assassinations accuse high-ranking officials of the Central Intelligence Agency of lying to the people of the United States about Lee Harvey Oswald. House investigators believe this man, David Atlee Phillips, met with Oswald 2 months before the assassination. Phillips was the CIA's chief of Western Hemisphere operations and was in charge, among other things, of plots against Fidel Castro.
You know, another thing I learned about Bishop, Maurice Bishop, is that he was raised in Fort Worth. And he lived literally within a mile or two of where his home was in like a mile or two of where Marina Oswald and Oswald's home was at when he was a kid. Okay? So I find that extremely, extremely interesting. All right, keep going.
According to the secret reports, Antonio Veciano, a leader of anti-Castro Cubans directed by the CIA, saw Oswald talking to a senior CIA agent he knew by the cover name Maurice Bishop. Veciano provided enough information for House investigators to compile this sketch of the agent who met Oswald. Could it have been Phillips? Investigators believe it was. Phillips denied under oath that he knew Oswald, but House investigators did not believe him and wanted him charged with perjury. The government declined to prosecute, leaving investigators furious. The director of the CIA in 1963 was John McCone. He caused a sensation among committee staffers when he admitted there was an agent using the cover name Bishop. But a secret memo reveals he was allowed to reverse his testimony. A CIA lawyer wrote the committee, "I should inform you that he had been in error." In summary, Mr. McCone withdraws his statements on this point. The man who fingered Maurice Bishop, Antonio Veciano, was shot in the head soon after testifying, but survived. Frightened, he will no longer talk about the case.
Actually, it wasn't soon because, let's see if I got it right. So it's April 1978, he's testifying, and then it's September 1979 when he's shot in the head.
We caught up with him in Florida.
They wounded me in the head, trying to kill me.
You know why? Why would anybody?
I don't know, perhaps the FBI knows. The FBI knows.
Did they tell you?
No. Actually.
David Atlee Phillips died of cancer in 1988. Investigators believe Phillips was angry at JFK for botching the Cuban Bay of Pigs operation.
All right, keep going. All right, this is very interesting. This is a decoded cablegram from Mexico City, from the director, the legate in Mexico City, to the director of the CIA, and it says, very interesting, it says, Transports del Norte passenger list from October 2nd, last bus from Mexico City to Laredo, departing at 8:30 a.m. reflects reservation and sale of ticket number 13688 for seat number 12, fourth window seat on the left side, bus to Chihuahuas, determined to be Mexico City Travel Agency, ladder located, exchange order, departed September 30th, for sale of seat number 12, from above trip to O.H. Lee, an international exchange order against Western Greyhound Lines for travel of H.O. Lee via Greyhound bus from Laredo to Dallas. So he's using his alias again. Remember, it was O.H. Lee. He was staying at the house on Beckley. So he's using that alias again to purchase that ticket. And then they interviewed some of the individuals sitting across or by him, and they did ID him as Oswald. Let's see. All right, hold on one second. Okay, so just a few more things here. It says 25 September 1963, Oswald cashed unemployment check at Winn-Dixie 4303 Magazine Street, New Orleans. So this presents a problem because we've got Oswald actually supposedly being seen by Antonio Veciano the day before in Mexico City. So, very interesting. So what you could say, though, that happened is that Oswald came with Ruth Payne, or came in another vehicle after Ruth Payne and Marina left to Dallas, and then met with Maurice Bishop, and then went back to New Orleans and picked up his check. But that's a long ways to go back and forth for just $50. So what you could have then is that this date is not correct. It either happened in August, and then Oswald got his mission, and then he went back to New Orleans, sent his wife off, cashed his check, and then went on to Mexico City, or the date is after the 25th. Okay? I think that it happened before the 23rd, maybe even the end of August. Oswald meets with Bishop in Dallas, then goes back to New Orleans, packs up his wife, sends her to Dallas, and then goes back, gets his check. And again, you got to wonder, Oswald is only getting $50 a month unemployment. He's got no money. So how is he able to pack up his wife, pay for tickets to Mexico City and hotels, pay for food, bus fare, all that stuff. And I submit that he's getting money from Maurice Bishop. I mean, we already know he's an FBI informant. He's making an additional $50 a month being an FBI informant. And now we have him working with Bishop, so he's probably getting another $200, $300 there. All right. So it says late in the evening, White House sources, in exclusive to the Dallas Morning News, announced that President will visit Texas November 21, 22, 1963. And the tour will include Dallas. So, again, I find that fascinating. How lucky is Oswald that he just happens to leave to go to Mexico City or go to Dallas via Mexico City the exact same day that it's announced that Kennedy will be traveling through Dallas. And not only that, okay, not only does he move back to Dallas, I mean, just think if he had gotten another job in New Orleans, we wouldn't know who Oswald is to this day, right? If Oswald had just said, no, I'm done working as an informant, I got a wife to take care of, you can understand, I got a baby, another baby on the way, I got to get a real job, you know, this auto factory or this shrimp boat or whatever is hiring, and I'm going to go take this job and stay in New Orleans because I like New Orleans. I was raised here. No one would ever know the name of Oswald. Okay? But here he is, in the same day that Kennedy, it's announced that Kennedy's going to be coming to Dallas, he gets his marching orders. Okay, get going. He's gone. And then not only is he lucky with that, where he could have ended up staying in New Orleans, he also just happens to get a job within, 2 weeks after getting there, in the exact same building, on the same route the president will be driving by, the very last place the president will be driving by as he exits downtown Dallas. Oswald just happens to get a job there. How remarkably lucky or unlucky he is. Just think, if you're a world assassin, you hate the world and you want to make a name for yourself and strike a blow for the first blow for the revolution, Oswald ends up in the same city the president's coming. He ends up in the same building the president's going to drive by, in the very last building, a tall building where the president's going to drive by. Just think if Oswald had gotten a job at the hotel or at Ruby's Club as a doorman. Or what if Oswald had gotten a job over in Fort Worth as a welder? History would be completely different. Our whole system of government would be completely different. But things don't happen by accidents like this. This is not just circumstance. This is not just a string of weird coincidences that all happen to meld together. What if Oswald had gotten arrested in Mexico City with the gun? What if the Soviets had called the Mexican police and Oswald ended up in a Mexican prison for the next year or two? All their plans would have been blown. So very interesting. So, on to my next subject here to fill up the last 15 minutes. Alright, so again, we're going to be looking at these foreign embassies, and this is the Embassy of Nicaragua. So, you can see this one is right here in Ottawa. It's right across the river from the Russian embassy. You know, because you got that. Was the Russian embassy? Yeah, right here. Chinese embassy is like down here or over there. But the Nicaraguan embassy is here, and it's saying that it has been closed. Let's look at our God's eye view. All right. Nice little neighborhood here. Just a regular house, it looks like. Let's see. Yeah, black maple, so it's been fenced off. So let's take a look. There's probably a couple of embassies on this row. Yeah, see? Some kind of private road there. Is there a camera? There's a pole. There's probably some kind of camera either attached there or in one of these trees. But that's a good place to have an embassy. Because here you have a big tree blocking the front entrance. Let's see, which one is the embassy? Hold on a second. Yeah. So there's that tree. There's the embassy. Yeah, it's right there. So you put up a big tree there. No one can see in the front here. Alright, let's see why. Yeah, so there's the embassy. Nice little spot. So let's see. It says it's been closed. Let's see. Wait, hold on. I got another one here. A picture. So there's a picture. It's got one bad review. One star. Getting straightforward into from this office is like pulling teeth. They have no idea of any process or procedures. Lack of professionalism, no procedure or protocol, straightforward, looks like fraudulent office. Wow. But it says here that it's been permanently closed. So wonder why it was closed. Is there a news article? All right, let's take a look at the news. Exiled and stripped of citizenship, Nicaraguans look to Canada for a chance to begin new lives. Interesting. All right, let's take a look at this. Canada adopts American First foreign policy, U.S. State Department boasts in 2017. Dun, dun. So something happened, it caused them to close the embassy. Let's take a look at one more embassy in Ottawa. We've got a few minutes. Okay, so we got the Embassy of Vietnam, and it's in Ottawa. I don't know what this river is. What is this river? The Redu? The Redu River. So this must be a nice river because there seems to be a lot of embassies there. Just like this one is the Embassy of Vietnam. Alright, so let's take a look at this area. There's a God's eye view. Are there any other embassies around here? Looks like it's off a side street here. Alright, hold on. Yeah. So again, Vietnam's one of these countries that really doesn't have a lot of enemies except China, but China is not one of these countries that really launches a lot of terrorist attacks. So let's start over here. Yeah, this looks like, wait, is that the side? Wait, hold on a second. Alright. So we got that. Wait, that's weird. Hold on. So... oh, okay, so yeah, that is the embassy there. This is kind of a side door. Or maybe that's the front door. So they have buildings that have front doors, but people don't use them. Like for the visas, they'll have a side office for the visas. They don't have a lot of security. Isn't that kind of weird? They got a little camera right there, a little waist-high fence. So again, you can tell who has enemies and who doesn't. Okay? So the more enemies you have, the higher fences you're going to have, and the more security. So, yeah, see they got a little side here. That's probably the visa office right there. It's got like a little sign on it. The gate's open. Got a little guy washing the car. Got a little vintage garage. But yeah, Vietnam doesn't have a lot of enemies. Just China. But again, when we're talking about enemies, you're usually talking about terrorist incidents. You're trying to prevent any kind of terrorist attacks. So like, you know, there's a lot of America has a lot of friends. We also have a lot of enemies. You know, you can only bomb so many places and not have people want to attack you. And then the Iranians, they have a lot of enemies, and so they're going to have high walls. And so, same thing with the Saudis. Let's see. Maybe we can get in one more. Let's see. We got Nicaragua, Vietnam, Afghanistan. I don't think Afghanistan's going to have an embassy. We'll try it. So that's interesting. It's saying it's got two different embassies. So I don't know which is which. It could be that you've got the Taliban has an embassy, and then you've got the other government have an embassy, but I very much doubt that. So let's take a look at this one down here. So this is kind of an odd place to have an embassy. But we'll check it out. Let's see. Yeah, something's going on there. Hold on one second. I think that's it, but I'm not certain. You can always tell a lot of these embassies, they'll have a lot of foliage, trees covering windows in the front, and that's basically to protect them from people looking in. Now here we go. Look, maybe that's why they have this embassy here, because this maybe is the Muslim part of town. Alright, let's take a look at the other one. This is kind of downtown. I think that maybe that's a consulate, and this other one's going to be the main embassy. Yeah, Afghan embassy right there. Okay, yeah. So this is going to be in some kind of formal building here. Although, wait a minute. Let's check. Hold on a second. Alright, so it says it's right here. No, it's right there. But what is that? That's like a government office building. Government of Canada. So it's definitely not there. So it's not in that building. Although it says that's where it's at. Not certain. Well, definitely the other location. Alright, so that's enough for now. And we're going to keep moving on and keep hitting on all these points here. I'm going to start doing a little bit more JFK videos. I've been caught up on doing a lot of videos on my other channel. I'm getting a hell of a lot more views over there, but kind of getting burnt out on it. So I'm going to split my time up between this one and that one, and some other things that I'm working on. Alright, take care. And alright, we'll take care. Alright, see you later.